The system told me to break my target. The target was an Archon of the Celestial Court, a proud and cold nine-tailed fox spirit. It ordered me to steal her core, the source of her power, during a trial of ascension when she was at her most vulnerable. Instead, I called down the celestial lightning upon myself, using half my life to shield her from the fatal blow. The final mission was to pierce her heart with the Warden's blade, to utterly annihilate her soul. I couldn't bear it. I shattered the blade with my bare hands. For my defiance, the system erased my consciousness, and I fell into an endless sleep. 300 years later, I was awakened by an infinite tenderness. The fox spirit who had nearly died was now the Archon Queen, ruler of the Shadow Realms. She had me trapped on a throne woven from her own 9 tails, her tongue licking the blood from the corner of my mouth. She smiled, a vision of predatory grace. "You foolish man." I tore down 99 celestial citadels just to piece together the fragments of your soul. "Now, your life is mine. Your body is mine. Every breath you take will be scented with my name. If you ever dare to leave me again, I will devour you whole, fuse your bones with my own, and we will never be separated." There was a warmth on my lips. It tasted of blood, mixed with a sweet, chilling fragrance. I snapped my eyes open. A face impossibly beautiful and achingly cold was inches from my own. It was Lilith, but she had changed. The innocence in her eyes from 3 centuries ago was gone, replaced by a chilling majesty and power. A crimson, glowing sigil on her forehead pulsed like a blood lotus blooming in the dead of night. Behind her, 9 enormous snow-white tails soared toward the ceiling, like the halo of a wrathful god, like the bars of a cage, sealing the entire magnificent, gloomy hall in an airtight prison. Seeing I was awake, the corner of her mouth curved into a smile. That smile was pure, predatory grace, and it sent a shiver down my spine. She extended the tip of her tongue and gently licked away the blood from my lips. "Welcome home, you foolish man." Her voice was soft and low, a lover's whisper. "Home? Where's this?" I struggled to sit up, but a tearing pain shot through my entire body. Worse, my wrists and ankles were gently encircled by several of her tails. The fur was soft and smooth, but the strength behind it was absolute. I was trapped, imprisoned on a throne woven from her own tails. "Let me go," I said, my voice so hoarse it didn't sound like mine. Lilith just smiled, stroking my cheek, as if admiring a priceless treasure she had finally recovered. "Let you go? Ethan, I searched for you for 300 years. I slaughtered my way through 99 celestial citadels, killed every so-called angel who stood in my way, just to snatch these fragments of your soul back from the hands of fate. You are my only treasure now. How could I ever let you go again?" Below the throne, rows of powerful shadow lords stood with their heads bowed, silent as the grave. One of them, a hulking commander in heavy armor, dared to look up, his voice a low growl. "Your Majesty, he is a mere mortal, a broken thing pieced together from a shattered soul. Why lavish such attention on him? Making him your consort to warm your bed is already a gift beyond his station." Consort? Before I could even process the word, Lilith's eyes turned to ice. "What did you say?" The commander shuddered, trying to explain himself. "My lord, I only meant." He never finished the sentence. One of her tails shot out like a bolt of lightning, instantly piercing his chest. The commander's face was frozen in shock as his formidable body withered at a visible rate. His immense power, his flesh, his very soul, it was all siphoned away in an instant. Finally, only a suit of armor clattered to the floor. The man inside had turned to dust. The great hall was deathly silent. Lilith retracted her tail, as if she had just swatted a fly. She turned back to me, her gentle smile returning. "You see, no one is allowed to speak ill of my treasure." She leaned in, her nose brushing against my neck, her tone laced with a kind of innocent cruelty. "Anyone who does, I kill them." In that moment, I finally understood with terrifying clarity. In 300 years, the weak little fox spirit I had once protected had become a true, merciless queen, and I was her prisoner, cradled in the palm of her hand. She lifted me into her arms, her movements impossibly gentle. I was rigid, utterly drained of the strength to resist. Her private chambers were the height of dark luxury, with curtains of siren silk and soulfire lamps that cast a cool, ethereal glow. She laid me on a soft bed and personally brought a basin of warm water to clean my body. The warm cloth glided over my skin, but her fingertips were cold, intentionally or not, tracing paths across my chest, my stomach. A shiver ran through me. Only I can look at your body. Only I can touch every inch of your skin. I closed my eyes, feeling a hopeless despair in this obsessive, suffocating tenderness. Lilith's care for me was pathologically intense. She would comb my hair herself, patient with every single strand. She would sit by my bedside, watching me sleep until the dawn. She would even feed me herself. A jade fork held a translucent, shimmering piece of nectar-laced fruit to my lips. "Ethan, open your mouth." I turned my head away, my stomach churning. The intimacy was a humiliation. Lilith didn't get angry. She put the fork down and took the piece of fruit into her own mouth. Then, she seized my chin and forced a kiss upon me. Her soft lips pressed against mine, her nimble tongue prying my teeth apart, passing the morsel to me. The rich, magical energy and the cold fragrance of her mouth filled my senses. I was forced to swallow. She licked the corner of my lips, smiling with satisfaction. "Isn't it sweeter this way?" She had me pinned against the headboard, my chest heaving. This aggressive, unyielding dominance slammed a long-buried memory into my mind. System alert. Mission issued. Publicly steal the nine-tailed fox's food and mock her for being unworthy. It was the first time we met. She was just a young spirit, barely able to hold her human form, bullied by the other acolytes at the academy. She was hiding in a corner, gnawing on a piece of stale bread. Following the system's command, I walked toward her. I kicked the broken bowl she was cradling in her arms. The stale bread rolled into the dirt. I looked down at her, my voice dripping with the most venomous words I could muster. "Do beasts like you even deserve to eat this?" In that instant, I saw the shame and hatred flare in her eyes. But no one else saw me lean down, and with my next words, audible only to her, I whispered rapidly in her ear. "The old grove behind the ridge. Go now. Don't look back." The hatred in her eyes froze, replaced by utter confusion. The memory faded. Back in the present, Lilith was bathing me. The massive tub was filled with a shimmering, enchanted liquid, steam rising in hazy clouds. Her fingers gently traced over the jagged scar on my chest. "This is so ugly." She bent her head, and her cool lips pressed against the scar. "From now on, I will never let you be harmed again." Her warm breath on my chest felt like a plunge into an icy abyss. Another memory, even sharper, surfaced. System alert. Final mission prerequisite. Seize Lilith's protective artifact, the Viridian Locket, and leave her to fend for herself against the beasts of the harrowing. It was her first trial in the enchanted wilds, a proving ground for the Order. The Viridian Locket was the only thing her mother had left her. In front of everyone, I brutally tore the locket from her neck. "A piece of trash like this doesn't suit you," I said. The moment I turned away, I secretly detonated a high-level disruption sigil I'd bought from the system's store. The massive blast scared off most of the powerful beasts, leaving only a few she could handle if she pushed herself to the limit. I hid behind a cluster of rocks, watching her fight for her life among the remaining creatures, her body covered in wounds. Every time she was hit, my own heart felt like it was being sliced open. But I had to stand there, a cold, mocking smile plastered on my face as the system required. I waited until she collapsed from exhaustion. Only then did I use the locket I'd stolen to secretly block a fatal blow meant for her. "Ethan, what are you thinking about?" Lilith's voice pulled me back. She held my face in her hands, studying me closely. "Why won't you look at me?" I looked into her eyes, saw the obsession and possession swirling within them, and finally understood. Her madness today was the direct result of my villainy yesterday. The more she loved me, the more she hated me. The more she wanted me close, the more she feared I would abandon her again. A tidal wave of guilt and remorse washed over me. How could I ever explain that none of it was what I truly wanted? No, even if I told her, would she believe me? Or would she just think my excuses were a new, more elaborate form of deception? 3. I had to try. Even if there's only a sliver of a chance, I wanted to pull her out of this self-destructive obsession. Lilith, it's a bit stuffy in here. I lay on the bed, looking at the windows, which were sealed shut by her tails. I like to go for a walk. Instantly, the temperature in the chamber plummeted. The smile that had been on Lilith's face vanished without a trace. Swish! Several more tails shot out from behind her, sealing the last few cracks of light in the chamber. The room went dark, illuminated only by the cold glow of the soulfire lamps. You want to leave me? Her voice trembled. In her beautiful, fox-like eyes, I saw a world-ending madness and the raw fear of being abandoned. My heart clenched. I just want to get some fresh air. Fresh air. She advanced on me, step by step, her tall figure casting a shadow that completely enveloped me. That's what you said 300 years ago. You said you were taking me somewhere fun, but you threw me into the chasm of souls. You said you'd protect me, but you called down the celestial lightning to strike me. Ethan, you left me once. It took me 300 years to find you again. She reached out, her hand closing around my neck. Her grip was fierce, yet restrained, as if terrified of truly hurting me. Are you trying to do it again? Her eyes were red, brimming with tears and insanity. Answer me. I couldn't breathe, able only to shake my head with difficulty. She didn't seem to see it. She slammed me back onto the bed. More tails surged forward, transforming into soft chains that bound my wrists, ankles, and waist firmly to the bed frame. You're not behaving. My foolish man isn't behaving at all. And children who don't behave must be locked away. She leaned over me, her nose sniffing frantically at my neck, like a deeply unsettled animal. What if I broke your legs? She whispered in my ear, her voice gentle, the words themselves monstrous. I'll have them healed with the finest enchanted bone, so you can still walk. But you'll only be able to walk by my side. What does that sound? Seeing the genuine terror and the shimmering tears in her eyes, the softest part of my heart was brutally pierced. All my resistance, all my excuses melted away in that moment. It was my fault. I was the one who had twisted her into this. I let out a long sigh. Raising the one hand that could still move slightly, I gently touched her cheek. I'm not leaving. My voice was quiet but incredibly firm. Never again. Lilith's body went rigid. She stared at me, dumbfounded, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Taking advantage of her shock, I mustered all my strength, leaned up, and kissed her on the lips. This kiss held no lust, only endless comfort and heartfelt pain. She was frozen for 3 solid seconds. Then, she responded with a near-feverish intensity. She forced my lips apart, conquering and claiming, pouring 300 years of longing and fear into a kiss that stole my breath. The tails binding me tightened and tightened, as if trying to break me, to crush me, to merge my very essence with her own. I knew in that moment that my gamble had paid off. In this pathological game of captivity, I had finally found the key to soothing her. And that was to be even more forward than she was. For my submission, sent the Archon Queen into a state of ecstasy. She no longer confined me solely to her chambers, but began taking me with her to various functions in the Shadow Realm. During meetings of her High Council, I sat on a secondary throne just beside and slightly below hers. Below us were the most powerful Shadow Lords and Dread Commanders of her entire domain. They had once looked upon me, her mortal consort, with disdain. Now, they were all trembling, not daring to even lift their heads. A report, Your Majesty. A panther-like lord stepped forward, kneeling on one knee. The remnants of the celestial orders are exceptionally cunning. Our last few attempts to encircle them have failed. They seem to have advance warning. It's as if they have a master strategist guiding them. Lilith sat on her throne, propping her chin on one hand. Her other hand, hidden by the armrest, was tightly holding mine. She gave a cold, contemptuous laugh. A flock of headless chickens. What kind of master strategist could they possibly have? Despite her words, a flicker of gravity crossed her face. Just then, a commotion came from outside the hall. A squad of her guards marched in, escorting a group of prisoners. The leaders of the group were dressed in the tattered, once proud uniforms of the Order of the Argent Star. As they were forced into the hall, their faces filled with terror and disbelief when they saw the cold, majestic queen on the throne. When their eyes fell on me, that terror curdled into thick contempt and confusion. My gaze swept over them, finally landing on the arrogant young man at the front. Caleb Thorne. I remembered him. 300 years ago, he was the so-called prodigy among the inner circle of the Order of the Argent Star. He was also the one who had bullied Lilith the most viciously. He clearly recognized me too, his eyes burning with scorn. Demon Queen, you're Lilith? He shouted, his shock palpable. You've actually fallen this far. And you're with Ethan? This worthless sycophant. Back then, he was nothing but a dog licking the boots of the Grandmaster. How could you? You didn't finish. My expression had turned to ice. A memory surfaced, unbidden. System alert. Triggering side quest. Publicly mock Lilith for overestimating her abilities in challenging the prodigy, Caleb Thorne. That time, Lilith had offended Caleb while trying to get a healing elixir for me. He beat her severely and left her on the sparring grounds for all to see. The system's mission alert sounded. I walked up to Caleb, a fawning smile on my face, and I brought my foot down, hard, on the hand Lilith was using to try and push herself up. Trash should know its place, I said, my words like knives, humiliating the girl on the ground whose eyes still blazed with defiance. But under my boot, I used a special technique bought from the system store to silently inject a curse-laced silver sliver into his meridian point. For months after, Caleb's power inexplicably regressed. He missed the Order's grand tournament and became a laughingstock. He would never know it was my doing. Now, watching him as a prisoner at my feet, his face contorted with hatred, while I sat comfortably beside the ruler of the realms, our fingers intertwined. The stark contrast filled me with a cold, satisfying pleasure. Let's see, I thought, which of us has the last laugh? Your so-called righteous order, or this worthless sycophant? How noisy! Lilith frowned impatiently, one of her tails twitching with lethal intent. Just search their souls and find out who's pulling the strings. Hearing the words, search their souls, the prisoners' faces went white with terror. Don't! I placed a hand on her cool one. Their souls are warded. A forced search will just obliterate them, and we'll get nothing. In the hall, every Shadow Lord, including Lilith, turned to look at me in surprise. I ignored their stares, slowly rising from my seat and descending the steps of the dais. My body was still weak, and each step was slow. But with every step I took, the faces of the prisoners below grew paler. I finally stopped in front of Caleb Thorne. He was forced to his knees by the guards, but still held his head high, glaring at me with venomous eyes. I smiled. Caleb, old friend, it's been a while. I leaned down, my voice quiet, but it carried clearly throughout the silent hall. That scar on your left arm. From 3 years ago. Your beloved protégé, Amelia, stabbed you in the back for it, didn't she? All because you stole the phoenix tear that was rightfully hers. Caleb's face changed dramatically. How do you know that? That was his deepest secret, his greatest shame. I ignored him, turning to a trembling acolyte next to him. And you, Marcus, you embezzled the Order's treasury to buy life-extending potions for your mortal family. If the elders ever found out, your entire family would be executed, wouldn't they? Marcus collapsed in a heap on the floor. I moved to the third prisoner, then the fourth. With every sentence I spoke, another person's psychological defenses crumbled. They looked at me now not with contempt, but with pure, unadulterated terror, as if they were looking at a demon who knew their every secret. The Shadow Lords on the dais had gone from surprise to awe. Lilith watched me from her throne with keen interest. Her beautiful, fox-like eyes shone with a strange light, as if she were seeing me for the first time. I walked back to Caleb. Using a voice only the prisoners could hear, I said, "Tell me who the mastermind is, and I can have the Queen spare your mortal families." Otherwise, I didn't have to finish. They understood. Their mental fortitude shattered. They forgot all about the honor of their order. They scrambled over each other to spill everything they knew. One name came up again and again. Aiden Sterling, a man who called himself the Chosen One, who wielded a divine blade of ancient power and had escaped from some sealed, forgotten land. He was the one who had rallied the remnants of the celestial orders. He was the one who had planned all their movements. Aiden. With the information I needed, I turned and walked back to the throne. Lilith naturally took my hand, pulling me back down to sit beside her. The way she looked at me now held a new, burning admiration and a deeper, darker possessiveness. My Ethan knows so much. For the first time in front of her court, I wasn't just the queen's captive consort. I was her strategist. It wasn't a bad feeling, but that name, Aiden Sterling, felt like a splinter lodging itself in my heart. 6 Aiden Sterling. The name was like a thunderclap in my mind. The original protagonist of this world. The world's corrective force had finally arrived. My heart sank, and the color drained from my face. What's wrong? Lilith, ever observant, caught my momentary lapse. She immediately tensed, the demonic aura she had just restrained beginning to churn around her again. Are you afraid of him? She pulled me into her embrace, her tails wrapping around us in a protective cocoon, shielding us from all other eyes. Don't be afraid. She stroked my back, her voice softer and firmer than I'd ever heard it. As long as I'm here, no one will ever touch a single hair on your head. I knew she had misunderstood. I wasn't afraid of Aiden. I was afraid he was the spark that would detonate the powder keg of Lilith's fragile sanity. Back in her chambers, after dismissing all the attendants, Lilith took my hand. From a dimensional artifact, she produced a translucent, crystal-like amulet. It was the color of blood, carved with the image of a lifelike nine-tailed fox. I could feel an immense power radiating from it, a power that shared the same source as Lilith herself. I forged this for you. It's a heart ward. She placed the amulet around my neck. Its cool surface rested against my skin. It contains a pocket dimension, a world unto itself. It has everything you could ever need. I used every rare treasure I've gathered over the past 300 years, and she paused, her voice dropping lower. 90% of my heart's blood and 90% of my life force are bound within it. My hand shot up, grabbing the warm amulet. 90% of her heart's blood? 90% of her life force? Was she insane? She had effectively handed me half of her life. If you're ever in danger, hide inside it, she said, her tone placid, but every word landed with the weight of a mountain. Unless I die, no one in this world or the heavens above can break it. I clutched the amulet, my fingertips trembling. This wasn't a protective artifact. This was a crushingly heavy, pathologically intense declaration of love, in a cage forged from her very life. She held me tighter, whispering the most insane words in the softest voice imaginable. I'll look for you for 300 years. I can't lose you again. Anyone who tries to take you from me, I'll kill them first. Then I'll destroy all the realms and have them serve as your funeral pyre. I finally understood. I could no longer passively wait for the crisis to arrive. I had to find a way to take control of the situation before Aiden and Lilith came face to face. Otherwise, both of us would be crushed to pieces by this world's runaway fate. I decided to stop passively accepting her kindness. I would use her possessiveness against her, to tame her in reverse. I needed her to understand that love wasn't about confinement, but about devotion. Lilith. I leaned against the headboard, looking at the magically sealed view outside the window, and let out an intentional sigh. The flowers in the chamber are beautiful, but I've grown tired of them. The flowers in the starlight atrium seem lovely. A shame I can't see them up close. Lilith, who was peeling an enchanted fruit for me, paused. She glanced at me, but said nothing. The next day, I woke to an astonishing sight. The entire starlight atrium, including its pavilions, rockeries, and flowing streams, had been magically uprooted and moved to just outside our chambers. An even stronger barrier now surrounded the garden, ensuring that only I could see it, only I could enter. Lilith sat by my bed, looking for praise. Now, the entire garden is yours. I was shaken, but I merely offered a faint smile. Thank you for your trouble, Your Majesty. A few days later, while browsing through the royal library, I pointed to a passage about a treacherous region called the Sea of Whispers. I mused aloud. I wonder what the scenery there is really like. That night, Lilith used her immense power to project a real-time image of the Sea of Whispers onto the ceiling of our chamber. The churning black water, the columns of resentful energy, the jagged reefs, She sat with me, and we toured it together all night. I started to push things further. One day, I want a sun pearl, a fruit that ripened only once every 3 millennia in the deepest ocean trench. The next, I wanted to hear the siren's lament, a song from a long-extinct race on the southern shores. Lilith was tireless in her efforts to please me. The entire Obsidian Palace was mobilized at high speed to satisfy my endless whims. The Shadow Lords went from grumbling complaints to numb acceptance to their current state of routine. The way they looked at me changed from awe to a deep, profound confusion. They couldn't seem to understand how their ruthless, decisive queen could be so indulgent toward a worthless mortal. This time, Lilith returned from the frozen wastes of the far north with a freshly bloomed ice lotus. As she handed it to me, her long, slender fingers were coated in a layer of frost. I didn't take the lotus. Instead, I took her hand and pulled it into my lap, warming it with my own body heat. "Why are your hands so cold?" Lilith's body jolted. She stared at me, a dazed, lost look in her eyes. It was an expression I'd never seen on her before. For 300 years, she had been the one taking care of others, the one protecting the fragile fragments of my soul. No one had ever done anything for her. "You're worried about me?" She finally breathed out. She snapped out of her daze, a sly, cat that got the cream smile spreading across her face. She buried her head in the crook of my neck, nuzzling me affectionately. I wrapped my arm around her waist and whispered in her ear, using the same word she had once used on me. "You're mine." Of course I'm worried. That single sentence made her melt completely. I could feel her arms tightening around me, her whole body trembling with an exquisite joy and contentment. In this game of captivity that I now directed, it was my turn to make the rules. 8. The peace didn't last. Aiden Sterling arrived. He was even stronger than I had imagined. Wielding his so-called divine blade, he single-handedly broke through several of the Shadow Realm's outer defenses. His sword light pierced the heavens, a beacon of holy energy. He stood on a cloud, clad in white, his voice booming. "Demon Queen Lilith, show yourself." His voice, amplified by magic, echoed through half of the royal palace. In our chambers, Lilith's hand, which was peeling a grape for me, froze. Murderous intent flashed in her eyes. Insolent little gnat. She started to rise, but I caught the corner of her sleeve. I looked up at her, my face arranged into the perfect expression of anxiety that the system had trained me to use, the one that most triggered her protective instincts. "Take me with you." My voice trembled slightly. "I am scared." The softest part of Lilith's heart was struck. The killing intent in her eyes vanished, replaced by boundless tenderness. "All right, I'll take you with me." She leaned down and kissed my forehead. Then she took the heart-ward amulet from my neck and placed it over her own heart. "Stay inside and watch me crush this fly." A flash of light, and I was drawn into the amulet space. The world inside was just as she'd said, a complete realm with mountains and rivers. But I had no time to admire it. All my focus was on the world outside. On the battlefield, Aiden Sterling stood in his white robes, golden sword in hand, radiating righteousness. When he saw Lilith emerge from the shadows, a clear look of awe and determination crossed his face. He spoke, his voice filled with tragic purpose. "Milady, you have the grace of the heavens. You must come from a noble order. Why would you ally yourself with demons and fall to such darkness? Renounce this path and return with me to the celestial light. I, Aiden Sterling, swear on my honor to protect you." Inside the amulet, I almost laughed. This guy was just like the character in the original story, self-righteous and full of cheap heroism. Lilith didn't even bother to give him a second glance. "And what are you?" Her voice was glacial, dripping with contempt. "That you think you can lecture me?" Aiden was taken aback, his face flushing red. "I am here to save you. That man you keep by your side, Ethan, he is a dark sorcerer who has stolen a destiny that wasn't his. You must be under his spell." He knew my name. My heart sank. It seemed the world's corrective force was stronger than I thought. It had even told Aiden of my crimes. But hearing my name from his lips was the final trigger for Lilith. The world-breaking, murderous aura she possessed erupted from her, no longer restrained. "You are not worthy to speak his name," she hissed, her eyes flashing crimson. You pathetic fool. The battle began in an instant. Lilith's 9 tails unfurled, their demonic energy blotting out the sky. Aiden's divine sword moved like a dragon of light, stirring the very clouds. But I could clearly sense it. All of Aiden's attacks, while seemingly aimed at Lilith's vital points, had one true, underlying target, the amulet hanging at her chest. Me. The battle reached a stalemate. Lilith was powerful, but Aiden, as the chosen one, was her equal. The divine sword he wielded seemed to have a powerful suppressive effect on her demonic energy. With every clash, Lilith's aura was diminished, while Aiden seemed to draw from an endless well of power, growing stronger as the fight wore on. This couldn't continue. He would wear her down and kill her. I had to take a desperate gamble. An idea formed in my mind, and I immediately sent a telepathic message to Lilith through the amulet. Lilith, listen to me. Pretend to be seriously injured by his next attack. The worse it looks, the better. Make him think he has a chance to grab the amulet. Lilith, locked in combat with Aiden, flinched. Her movements faltered for a fraction of a second. I could feel her hesitation and fear. For her to intentionally get hurt, using me as bait, it went against her every instinct. Trust me, I sent again, my tone leaving no room for argument. A second later, a look of wild resolve flashed in Lilith's eyes. She trusted me, unconditionally. On the battlefield, she deliberately created a massive opening in her defense. Aiden, overjoyed, seized the opportunity, his sword slashing viciously across her shoulder. Pah! Lilith coughed up a mouthful of blood, her body falling from the sky like a broken doll. The crimson light of the amulet on her chest dimmed significantly. The queen is a spent force. Aiden's triumphant roar echoed across the sky. Now, dark soul, it is time for your purification. He held nothing back, channeling every last bit of his power. He became a blinding golden meteor, streaking toward Lilith's chest. His target was the now-dull amulet. Lilith, half kneeling on the ground, looked up at the approaching light, and a cruel smile touched her lips. She had already, following my instructions, laid a perfect trap. Just as Aiden was about to touch the amulet, I screamed the command through our mental link. Now! Lilith's head snapped up, her eyes blazing with crimson light. Arise! Boom! From the ground below, 9 colossal pillars of blood-red light erupted, reaching for the heavens. Runic chains flowed between the pillars, instantly forming a giant cage. The 9 pillars were her 9 tails. Using her body as the catalyst and her tails as the foundation, she had unleashed the most powerful forbidden art of the 9-tailed fox clan, the Cage of Ruin. Aiden was moving too fast to stop. He plunged headfirst into the trap. The brilliant golden light surrounding him was instantly suppressed by the blood-red array, extinguished inch by inch. No, this is impossible. Aiden roared in terror from within the cage. With a flash of light, I appeared from the amulet, standing completely unharmed at the edge of the array. I smoothed my robes, looking down at the pathetic, struggling form of Aiden Sterling. I smiled. Chosen one, we meet at last. 10 Ethan, you thief. Aiden thrashed wildly within the cage, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me. You stole everything that was meant to be mine. I crossed my arms, watching him with detached amusement. Thief, let me ask you something. Do you often hear a voice in your head? One that tells you exactly which cliff to visit, which abyss to jump into, so you can just happen to find some legendary technique or an ancient divine sword. Aiden looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. His expression froze. That was his greatest secret. It was how he'd gone from a nobody to the leader of the righteous path. We have a name for that. It's called a system, I said, walking to the edge of the cage, my voice low, but every word a dagger. Or, if you prefer, you can call it the plot. According to the script it wrote, you, Aiden Sterling, are the chosen one of this world. The protagonist. And I pointed to myself, was a disposable villain, not even worthy of a name in the credits. I gestured behind me, where Lilith had silently appeared, her hand now tightly gripping mine. The system ordered me to hurt her, to humiliate her, to make her hate me to her very core. Then, At the height of your glory, you were supposed to show up and save her from her suffering. In the end, you too, a paragon of light and a redeemed shadow, would fall in love and live happily ever after. A true epic for the ages. A perfect story, isn't it? Aiden's face had gone from red to white to a sickly green. Such a shame, I said, shaking my head with a mocking smile. I didn't follow the script. I love her. I turned to Lilith, my gaze softer and more sincere than it had ever been. And that's why I chose to be annihilated by the system, chose death itself, rather than ever hurt her again. Lilith hugged me tightly from behind, her body trembling with emotion. She buried her face in my back, crying silently. I looked back at the utterly broken Aiden Sterling and delivered the final blow. Look closely. She, Lilith, tore down 99 celestial citadels for these few fragments of my soul. For me, she defied fate itself, transforming from a simple acolyte into the Archon Queen of the Shadow Realms. Her love, her madness, her entire being, from beginning to end, it has all belonged to me, Ethan, and me alone. I leaned down, looking into his eyes, now devoid of all light, and said, word by word, "You are nothing." Crack! A faint sound echoed in the silence. The divine blade in Aiden's hand let out a sorrowful cry as a web of cracks spread across its surface. He collapsed to the ground, muttering to himself like a madman. It's not real. None of it was real. His will, his faith, his vaunted destiny. In that moment, I had personally shattered them all. His destiny was broken. He was no longer a threat. 11 Aiden Sterling was stripped of his power and thrown into the abyss of no return, the deepest dungeon in the Shadow Realm. There, he would have an eternity to reflect on his laughable dream of being a protagonist. With the world's final corrective force dealt with, Lilith made a decision that shocked the realms. She would hold an unprecedented coronation ceremony. For me, to declare to all of creation that I, Ethan, was her one and only prince consort, for now and for all time. The news caused an uproar. Since the dawn of time, a queen might take a consort, but to hold a full coronation for a man, it was unheard of, especially for a powerless mortal like me. But no one dared to object. The Shadow Lords, thoroughly cowed by Lilith's iron fist, proved their loyalty through their actions. The ceremony was grander than any royal ascension in history. Legions of demons and spirits came to pay tribute. I stood beside Lilith on the highest point of the palace, the Stargazer's spire, dressed in a formal black suit that mirrored her own royal regalia. Below us, the entirety of the Shadow Realms bowed in reverence. At the end of the ceremony, Lilith dismissed everyone. We were alone on the spire. She held the seal of the Archon, the nine-tailed fox sigil that symbolized supreme authority over her empire. She walked toward me, and then, as I watched, she slowly, deliberately knelt on one knee. Ethan, she looked up, her fox-like eyes that had once swirled with madness and obsession, now filled with the purest love and a deeply hidden insecurity. With all the realms as my dowry, her voice trembled, almost imperceptibly. Will you consent to live forever in the cage I have built for you? In the end, she was still afraid. Afraid I would leave. Afraid this was all just a dream. I looked down at her, 100 emotions welling up inside me. I took the heavy seal from her hands, the seal that commanded legions and held sway over empires. In accepting it, I was accepting half of her power and half of her life. Then I pulled her to her feet, and I whispered in her ear, in a voice only we could hear, my solemn vow. I will. I felt her body stiffen. I held her close and continued. But this isn't a cage. It's home. She froze. A long moment passed before she finally smiled. It was a smile that shimmered with unshed tears, the smile of a child who had just been given all the candy in the world. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated happiness, free of all her former defenses and fears. I knew this twisted, obsessive love, which began with a system's mission and spanned 300 years of pain, had finally, in this moment, found its perfect equilibrium. And I accepted it willingly. With the dust settled, Lilith and I began a life that seemed bizarre to outsiders, but one we both cherished. She was still obsessive, her possessiveness still off the charts. But I had learned to enjoy it. Late at night, the chamber was dark, lit only by the cold, brilliant light of the nebulae that glittered in the sky of the Shadow Realm. As was her habit, Lilith had me curled up in her 9 fluffy tails, resting securely in her lap. She stroked my face gently, over and over, as if handling the world's most precious and fragile porcelain. This afternoon, you looked at the serving girl who brought the fruit for more than 3 seconds, she said softly, her tone laced with that familiar, all-consuming jealousy. I chuckled. I reached up, hooked a finger under her chin, and kissed her. I used the most direct method possible to derail her impending train of thought. After a long, deep kiss, I looked into her fox-like eyes, now glistening with emotion, and I echoed the words she had spoken to me when I first awoke. Every breath I take will only ever taste of you. Lilith's body went rigid, and then all the swirling possessiveness and madness in her eyes, like ice touched by the sun, slowly began to melt away.